Welcome, everybody. We are here at the Lee Midland High School Library. It is Tuesday, October 10th, 2023 at 7 o'clock. We are continuing to be in a virtual meeting room for Governor Baker's order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law 30, Section A. This meeting will take place in a hybrid fashion, both virtually via Zoom or in person for those committee members and attendees choosing to access and view them. I would like to call the meeting to order pursuant to Mass General Law C-30A-1520. I am hereby informing all attendees that a video and audio recording is being made of the meeting. I'd like to invite everybody to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, and tonight we are being led by Mia McGarvey and nope, it is just me. Thanks for nothing.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much.
All right. Next up is our mission statement. The mission of Lee Public Schools is to ensure students have the opportunities to develop social, civil, and critical thinking skills to thrive in an ever-changing world. Brenda, could you do roll call for us, please?
Mr. Robin?
Here.
Ms. Cooper?
Here.
Ms. Kashirk?
Here.
Mr. Langma?
Here.
Ms. Larman?
Here.
Mr. Nichols?
Here.
And Ms. Strickler is absent.
All right. Next up, we have the approval of our September 12th, 2023 school committee meeting minutes. We have a motion.
I make a motion to approve the Lee School Committee minutes from September 12th, 2020.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Brenda, can you do a roll call, please?
Mr. Robin?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Ms. Kashirk?
Yes.
Mr. Langwa?
Yes.
Ms. Larman?
Yes.
And Mr. Nichols?
Yes.
Next up, we have public input. Nichols.
Residents of Lee are invited to address the committee regarding items on this evening's agenda at this time. Issues raised will normally be referred to the administration or a subcommittee of the school committee.
Anybody in the voting room?
No. Madam Chair.
All right. Next up, we have our student presentation from Shakespeare and Company. This brings me great joy. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Carter.
I'm Alex.
I am in my 4th year at Shakespeare and Company.
I'm also my 4th year at Shakespeare and Company.
We've done it since 7th grade, but because of COVID, we didn't get to do it in 8th grade. But usually if you go from 7th to senior year, you have 6 years with Shakespeare and Company, which is I think we're one of 2 or 3 schools that actually have a middle school and a high school involved in the program, which is, I think, is really cool because it gives us like 2 more years of opportunity. And Shakespeare and Company is so awesome. It's so wonderful, and it gives I've always been a pretty loud and vibrant person, but it's really given me the place to shine and given other people who don't have that urge to talk very loud a place to talk very loud, because that's what you're supposed to do.
Me on the other hand, I'm very talkative if you get to know me, but I'm usually I don't like public speaking, so this is but like Shakespeare and Company makes you do things that you normally wouldn't have to do. You have to speak a language that we don't speak anymore. And it's just a big process, and projection is the main thing. And when you're performing on stage, you need people in the back of the auditorium to be able to hear you. So it helps you learn how to be loud and how to get people to hear your voice, because a lot of people, especially young people, I feel like have a very quiet voice and they don't know how to speak up for themselves. And that can be in like many different ways.
Yeah, and because it's also a middle school and a high school program, the seventh graders who are 12 and 13 get to grow, learn and grow, have this accepting personnel of like seniors and juniors and upperclassmen to guide them in it makes, I think, as a middle schooler doing Shakespeare and Company, it made middle school so much less scary because I had people to guide me that I knew in the hall. So when I was a little bit nervous and seeing people that drive trucks and have beards in the school, I could be like, as a 13-year-old, being friends with 18-year-olds and 17-year-olds and being peers and not like, I'm better than you. It's really, we're a community.
Kind of adding on to that, like being a middle schooler, you are 12 years old, some people 11 if you come to the 7th grade early. But you're just so young, and then there's people who are about to become adults, and it's just such a scary concept. I actually, when I was in middle school, stopped riding the bus for 2 years because high schoolers scared the crap out of me. But when you join Shakespeare, there's people there who you never would talk to before. And I remember being a 7th grader or an 8th grader, and there being, oh no, we didn't do it in 8th grade, a 7th grader, and there were 11th and 12th graders that they would recognize in the hallways and be like, hi, and it made you feel like you belong and you weren't in some foreign location, because there were people there that you could talk to if you had no one else to. Because when you come from up the hill to down here, it's such a transition from one place to another, and you don't know the location, you don't know the people, the teachers, students. It's just a great thing. But there's those students in Shakespeare that you can go to and talk to whenever you just need someone or just want to say hi to a friend that you wouldn't have met without it.
Mm-hmm. And this program's been going on for 35 years now, I believe. And it, they're going to continue it for a while, but the Shakespeare and Company itself is 43 years old, I believe. So it's been, this program has been at the heart of Shakespeare and Company. And that really shows through the common classes where every school gets together and we meet peers that have the same interests as us. And because I think the people who do theater are usually, they're such spans because they're very loud or they're very quiet and this is their place to shine. So putting all of these people in one group and telling them to connect, and they do it so easily, is such a big deal, and it's so important to have that opportunity. Is there any questions that I haven't answered for you that I probably can answer, hopefully?
How many students? I think it's great that you have a program like this for allowing all students and can come together in a safe place where I can do this or act this way without judgment. Can I say that? Without that sort of judgment. Where in school you feel like, maybe in my day, you felt like you always been judged based on how you were in school. Now this gives the kids an outlet, positive outlet, which is great.
And also, like in my case, I love theater and I want to do it for the rest of my life. So this gives people an opportunity to see if that's what they want to do, or if it's just a hobby, or how much they really want to be in that community, because it gives them a glimpse of what it is like. Do you have a question?
Just if you want to mention how many students are involved.
Right now, I believe there are cast and crew, there are about 42. Am I right?
So it is one of it's our second biggest co-curricular activity of them all that we have here.
And there's 35 just cast. So 35 people on stage and 42 people in the cast and crew. But everyone belongs.
Which is actually crazy because last year we had barely like 24, I think, with tech. We had maybe 18 actors. Yeah. So it's just crazy how so many people joined this year. And it's really nice to see new faces, get to know new people.
And I think it's really helped because COVID, everything shut down and you aren't able to connect with these people. So when now it's ramping up again because we lost it for so long, it's becoming even more of a big deal because people are like, oh my gosh, like Fall Fest is still happening. And it's giving people an opportunity to get that connection that they've been missing.
I do have one question. Do you perform like in the elementary school or at the high school?
We do at the high school, we don't at the elementary school for this program. We have 3 shows, we have 2 here, and we have 1 at Shakespeare and Company at the Tina Packer Playhouse, which is actually so wonderful because all of the, you're agreeing, all of,
My kids were part of. the
Yes,
program.
all of,
My nephews all watched.
it's so beautiful because everybody that I just talked about with that connection with Common Class and everyone agreeing on the same thing, they're all in the audience and they all know what you're saying because we dive very deep into these works, which helps us understand the language and helps us actually be the character, which is so crazy to think that we can relate to these characters that were wrote hundreds of years ago. But because we understand the language, people are booing, they're clapping, they're laughing. And I'm Macbeth in this production of Macbeth, which is cool to say. And I'm so excited to be hissed and booed, which is such a funny sentence, but I am.
We're gonna bring small children, take them to the Tina Packer Playhouse because they'll get more out of it. Because the students who are sitting down on the floor will help kids understand the play more
Yeah.
because they hiss and they boo and they cheer all at the right time. So the children actually understand what's gonna happen in the play better than they will if they come and see it at the schools because it cues them into what's gonna happen. It's such an amazing platform, which is why we spend so much time raising money for it. It's amazing. I'm so excited to have them come.
Just one last thing, the shows are November 9th and November 11th, here in the auditorium, the Z. So if you can make it, please come. It'll be
You can
amazing.
see what we're talking about because it's really cool.
It's
It's a little bloody because it's Macbeth, but it's gonna be really great.
We show the old ones on the cable network. Thank you. They show the old ones on there, so if you wanna like get a preview of what they look like, they're all on there.
Any more questions?
Real quick, the program is fantastic and you guys did a great job talking and sharing your experiences. I'm just curious, like in your opinion and your past experiences, do you feel that the skills that you get to practice and hone in this program translate to your other academic subjects?
You wanna go first?
Yeah, I definitely think they do because when it allowed like this program, you have to go through so many steps to there's the audition, there's the anticipation, the cast list, all that, and you have to be dedicated because you have to learn your lines, which I think helps you in a way become better at studying, at least for me, because after joining Shakespeare, I've learned different memorization techniques. So you have to learn lines and lines and lines and more lines, and it's a lot, and it almost makes you want to do more with school as well because there is if you're failing, I think
1 if
you have to be
high
passing
That's 5.
past 5 for high school and all of your classes for middle school. So it pushes you to make sure you're getting your work done, like accomplishing everything you need to do so that you can stay in this program and continue doing what you love.
And also the first thing that came up to me is like dictionary work when we dive deep into the text, which is what we've been doing for the past 2 weeks. And it helps me I like to think I understand what all words mean, but I don't. So it helps me to actually like pause and take a moment to understand what I'm saying and what I'm reading in everyday life, not just when we're going into very old work. So like even like in my English books and in my science, I actually take the time to understand what it means to me and not just be like, oh, it's okay, I kind of understand it. And it actually helps me be like, I need to understand this because it helps so much more when I do.
What they also don't realize that they're learning too, Craig, because I saw it when I was here as a director and wandering around the hallways, is they learn really good time management skills. Because if you're walking down the hallway, you'll see groups of them when they are down working on homework in like these little pods.
Yeah.
They aren't realizing this now, but they become really good.
And also I think teamwork, because theater is a team it's not a sport, but it's a team sport. And I think I'm not a athlete. I almost said sports kid. I'm not an athlete. I'm a theater kid 1,000%. But I did do basketball in like 5th grade. But I think that, in my personal opinion, it takes so much more to be a part of a team where, like, they say everyone wins if you're in football and that like no one person loses. But when you're in theater, it really is a team effort. And there's not a single person that is left out. No, because they cast you for a reason. You're there for a reason. And you have to be there. They want you there. And you feel that when you're there. You're like, I want to be there. Like, I know a lot of people are like, I have to get through my day to get to Shakespeare. And even like, I have that moment. It's like, oh, I don't want to go to school, but I have to go for Shakespeare. So that also helps with academics. And I have to be here because I need to get to.
It's like the motivator.
Yes, it is the motivator.
I want to do this, I want to do what I can to achieve this. Either it means I have to study for a test next day, or I need to do what I need to do so I can go. It's a great motivator. I mean, any after-school activator is a great motivator for kids.
I agree.
Someone said something, I believe, about the pods, people doing their homework. One thing, like, just wanted to add on about that I thought was funny. It's, rehearsals don't start until 3 o'clock. And so we all, like, if we're called, we go and one corner of the auditorium, we all pull out our homework. We're like, all right, guys, let's go. Gotta get this done in the next half hour. And it's just
because we want to actually be able to enjoy our time and not have to worry about what we have to do after.
anything else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great meeting.
All right. All right. I'm gonna make an assumption that you are am I correct? Can you introduce yourself?
I'm Natalie Hall.
Welcome. You're up. Yes, go ahead. You don't have to stand. You
No,
can sit right, you
stay.
can sit right there. No, you can sit right there.
The Social Justice Club has been proactive in organizing fundraisers aimed at promoting social justice. Additionally, they have launched a clothing drive to benefit those in need and encourage sustainability. The GSA is organizing an active fundraiser involving the sale of snacks. They are also in collaboration with the DC Trip fundraiser in April. Our school's quiz team is gearing up for the start of their season this month, with the first match to be held within our school premises. The band is scheduled to perform during the upcoming pep rally on Friday. This musical edition adds school spirit and enthusiasm among students. Our theater group, under the guidance of Shakespeare, has announced the production of Macbeth. Rehearsals have started and everything is going to schedule. Homecoming is set to take place on the 14th. This tradition is a wonderful opportunity for our students to unite, celebrate school spirit, and enjoy a memorable evening of festivities. The school hike on October 3rd was a resounding success, further encouraging positive student-teacher interactions. Such events contribute to a sense of community and strengthen bonds between our students and school faculty. The class of 2024 is actively fundraising by selling chocolate bars to support their senior trip. The school robotics club is starting up to bring students together for this exciting competition. We are now in the process of waiting for materials to come in before we can build. College visits are also being offered during school, allowing students to have an opportunity to explore and have a Q&A with schools of interest. And that's it.
Thank you so much. And thank you for standing in at the last minute. We appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have our superintendent.
All right, good evening. Thank you, and Principal Mertna, good luck in setting up some students to follow Shakespeare presentation. But I know that you will rise to the occasion for sure. But thank you for that update. It was pretty amazing. My report tonight is actually relatively brief in terms of substance outside of MCAS. I'm simply giving you enrollment updates. They continue to, as I've mentioned over the last couple of years, be a little bit concerning that we aren't at the numbers that we want to be. We are committed to continuing to work our best to attract school choice students, but we are still limited in terms of available housing, affordable housing in the town of Lee to attract families who live in Lee. But we are holding our own, but we will continue to monitor this closely, and you'll continue to get these reports monthly. The focus for tonight is indeed MCAS. I'm going to give about a 20,000 foot overview of MCAS performance district wide, and I'm going to turn it over to Principals Mertnook and Briganti to lead a little bit of drill down about the data relative to their individual schools. So I don't want to delay this any further. I think there we go. We'll skip right there. So quick overview. I think this is important to have some historical context because MCAS and accountability has changed so many times in recent years due to shifting testing requirements and the COVID pandemic, et cetera. The DESE, these are DESE's words, not mine. That the slide has halted and recovery is underway at post-pandemic world. And I'm not sure that that's 100% accurate, but that is their position. And I wanted to make sure I shared that with the committee. I want to make sure the committee and the community is cognizant and cautious of grade 3 results because of the impact of the pandemic, specifically on students who were in preschool and kindergarten. And the accountability system is being run in full for the first time since 2019. And I'm going to share some more detail about that on this slide. I'm going to minimize this screen over here. So if you look at accountability measures since 2019, you will notice that there were some gaps in 2020, 2021, and 2022, where specifically progress towards targets wasn't being factored into accountability for 3 years. We are back on to that, and I'm proud to say that we are meeting targets and we are exceeding some as well. We work on a scale of points from 0 to 4, and you can see on the screen what percentage in terms of your progress towards a target will lead you to either no change, improving below, meeting, or exceeding the target. I know this is small, and I apologize. It looks like you should be able to see it, and certainly if you can't or you have any difficulty, if you're at home, this will be posted to our website, so you'll have an easy one-stop shopping experience where you can go and take a look at this. But I want you to draw some specific attention. This is district-wide up here in the top left. 73% is the percentile, but I want you to pay attention to the number of 4s that are in these columns on the right-hand side. That is important for us to note that we're showing some growth. We're showing the points earned, and specifically, when you look at math, the work that we did with new curriculum. Our high quality instructional materials, I think helped us tremendously. There are subgroups that are identified district-wide and at each school. We're going to go through those individually. The first is high needs. Those students who fall into one or more subcategories, and you're going to see that some of those students are doing okay. Some of them are struggling, but that is in some ways anticipated because those students are oftentimes the ones who have the greatest challenges when they come to school each and every day. Our low-income students district-wide mostly performed well, including in ELA and mathematics. Science is a struggle for us, and I think that Mr. Briganti is going to address that specifically during his presentation. We only have a white subgroup, and that is not extraordinary for Lee. We don't have enough students that fall into other racial or ethnic groups to form smaller subgroups. If it's 10 or fewer students, they're not going to show up, and unfortunately, that's where the town of Lee falls right now. However, our white subgroup did well overall, in the spring 2023 administration. Overall accountability for Lee Elementary School, we struggled in ELA, but we did well in mathematics. You're going to see this, and again, I'm just giving you the high level picture. Principal Mertnick will talk more about this in just a couple of moments. Their high needs subgroup, again, mathematics was a strong area, including science as well. ELA, we struggled. You see an ELA struggle as well with low income. I want to believe, this is maybe getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I do want to believe that the high quality instructional materials that we purchased and implemented last year had a positive effect on the mathematics test results. We're hoping that the ELA materials that we're rolling out this year will have a similar effect when students are tested in the spring. Students with disabilities, that's our special needs students. Again, that's that subgroup, which is a growing one. Unfortunately, Ms. Norton indicates that she expects us to cross the 130 student threshold of students identified with special needs this year. That's a pretty substantial number when you're talking about a school district of just over 600 students. But again, we've got lots of room for improvement with that group. In the white subgroup, again, ELA was an area of struggle, but math and science, we saw some achievement. Here at LMHS, you notice that there are additional factors that go into their overall accountability, including advanced coursework and graduation rates and dropout rates. But again, if you pay attention to this column right here that I've just dragged my cursor over, you'll see lots of 4s to be proud of. High needs subgroup, we see the same struggle in ELA, some better performance in mathematics. Low income, it's interesting that that's the first 3 we've seen for a subgroup in ELA, but math, again, another 4. And in our white subgroup, again, high performance, 87%. And I'll turn it over to Principal Mertnick, who will go through his data, including some findings and next steps. And Principal Mertnick will turn it over to Principal Briganti for LMHS data. And when the 3 of us have wrapped up, we'll be happy to entertain any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Superintendent Richard. Taking a look at this first slide, I'll just kind of break down what the format is, because Principal Briganti and I have a very similar format. Anything that you see in green, that is where we're above the state average. Anything in red shows where we're below the state average. I'm just taking a snapshot at grade 3 math. You'll notice for exceeding expectations, we were above the state average of 12, the state average being 8. We are below for meeting expectations. And then that partially meeting expectations, again, the goal is always to push as many as we can up to the next category to try to get us to that threshold where we're either at the state average or above. If you look at our average scored scales, you'll notice from 21 to 22 into this year, there's an increase there. And our achievement percentile went from 39 last year up to 56 for grade 3 math. Looking at grade 4 math, the partially meeting expectation is much higher than the state average. Again, looking to push those students up into that next category to meeting so that we are closer to that state average. And one thing to note is the exceeding expectations, we didn't have anybody in that particular group. But you'll notice between 3rd and 4th grade that the not meeting expectations, we are well below the state average there. And the achievement percentile for grade 4 was also greater than that of the previous year, as well as the average scaled scores from 21, 22 to this year has just shown an increase. So we'll go to the next slide. Looking at math, again, looking at the not meeting expectations for grades 5 and 6, we are below the state average in both of those. Our partially meeting expectations, similar to grade 4, is higher in grade 5 and grade 6. We'd like to try to push that again up to the meeting expectations, and then try again to push some of those students who are right on the cusp of exceeding expectations from that meeting expectations group. You'll notice that the average scaled scores were increased for the 3 years. For 21 to 22, there was a 1-point drop, but then we recovered to 498 for grade 5 math. And then we had the same average scaled score for grade 6 math. But again, our achievement percentiles went up in both 5th and 6th grades, and for grades 3 to 6, which I'm proud of. and are not meeting expectations again, below the state average there. So shifting to ELA, a little bit of a different story this particular year for grades 3 to 6. You'll notice again, not meeting expectations. We are exceeding the state average there. Our student percentile did go down in grade 3 as well as grade 4 in math. And again, looking at the partially meeting expectations, looking to push those students up into that next category. And then again, meeting expectations on up to exceeding. Of note is there are no students who are in the exceeding expectations category for grade 3 and 4. And we did go down a little bit in grade 3 in terms of the average scaled score, as well as the average scaled score for grade 4 from ELA. And looking at 5 and 6, again, our not meeting expectations, grade 6 is greater than that or better than the state average. And we were right on par with not meeting expectations in terms of the state average. We were a little bit above in terms of partially meeting expectations. Meeting expectations, we were right above. So the 5th grade match is very similar to where the state average is, and our achievement percentile being 47%. It makes sense, but that is a pretty decent increase from 30% from the prior year. Our average student growth percentile was a little bit lower in this particular grade for ELA, and our average student growth percentile was almost at the state average for ELA in grade 6. And actually, Superintendent Reserve, if we could go back to the math, that was one point I did not point out for grades 5 and 6. Our average student growth percentile for grade 5 is at 74%, which is pretty really good. And for the grade 6 average student growth percentile, again, we were above the state average. So just wanted to make sure I pointed those out as well.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Let's go back and do grade 3 and grade 4 first.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Right. So obviously the grade 3 is the first year, so there's no student growth percentile. It was lower for grade 4 with 35 compared to the state average of 50. And we'll go to.
And for the committee, I don't want to step on your toes, Tim, but that 50 number is always going to be the case for the state average for SGP.
Right. So for grades 5 and 6 ELA, our achievement percentile did go up in 5th grade. It went down by 1 point in 4th grade. Our student growth percentile is below the state average for 5th and 1 point below the state average for 6th. Again, in 6th grade, our not meeting expectations was lower than that of the state. Again, we're trying to push students from those partially meeting expectations up to meeting or from meeting up to exceeding expectations. And our average scaled scores for grade 5 went up a little bit, and the average scaled score for grade 6 went down by 1 point. And then looking at science, this was a very strong area for us this particular year. Our achievement percentile was 66%, which is up 10 points from the previous year. Our average scaled score actually went down a little bit, but our not meeting expectations was well below the state average, and our meeting expectations was above, as well as exceeding was above. And you know, it would be my hope that we could continue to keep a look at or take a look at the HQIM science to be able to, you know, implement a program at LES that has fidelity throughout the grades to try to continue this level of scoring and maybe even exceed that. So looking down at some strengths for math for grade 3, four out of the 5 domains were higher than the state, with geometry being percentage higher, measurement and data 2% higher, number and operations in base 10, 2% higher. Operations algebraic thinking 6% higher. Grade 4, again, 4 domains are higher than the state. Geometry 4%, measurement and data 3%, numbers and operations of base 10 5%, operations algebraic thinking 1%. In grade 6, we had 1 domain higher than the state, which was the number system at 2% higher. So these are some successes I think that we can, you know, cautiously look at the you know, HQIM into math that we've done with fidelity last year and we're doing again this year. I'd like to think that that's a part of these scores that you're seeing. Areas of improvement for math, grade 4, we did have 5 domains that were lower than the state average, geometry being 13% lower, measurement and data being 12%, numbers and operations based 7%, numbers and operations fractions 9%, operations and algebraic thinking 3% lower. So that is an area where we are taking a look, trying to figure out, again, how we can support students who need that support. And I can talk about that later too, in terms of some RTI type of interventions we're trying. For grade 6, there were 4 domains lower than the state level: expressions and equations 3%, geometry 4%, ratios and proportional relationships 2% lower, and statistics and probability 1% lower. So flipping to ELA, again, ELA is an area that we are looking to definitely improve scores from, and the hope is the implementation this year of into reading in K through 5 and into literature in grade 6 will have a positive effect, similar hopefully to what we're seeing in math. We do have some strengths. It's in grade 5 where the language domain was 1% higher, and then the subdomains we were 3% higher than the state in integration of knowledge and ideas, and vocabulary acquisition and use, we were 2% higher. There are more concerns or areas of improvement for ELA. In grade 3, we had three domains that were lower: in language 1%, reading 5%, writing 6%. Grade 4, 3 domains were lower than the state as well: language 5, reading 5%, writing 4%. And in grade 5, we had 2 domains that were lower: reading 3% lower, writing 1% lower. In grade 6, we had 3 domains lower than the state: 4% for language, 3% for reading, and 4% for writing. And I will add, in terms of our accountability data overall, in 2022, LES was at 31, and this year we moved up to 41. In our high needs group, we went from 44 in 2022 to 54 in 2023. And our low income went from 56 to 63, and our white subgroup went from 15 to 25. So there is some growth there in terms of that accountability within those subgroups. And now we'll get to LES Science. Again, science was a strong year for us. All 4 domains were higher than the state. Earth and space science, 9% higher, life science, 1%, physical science, 2%, tech and engineering, 6%. There was 2 areas of improvement where in the subgroups where in heredity, inheritance, and variation of traits, we were 2% lower than the state, and waves and their applications and technologies for information transfer was 9% lower. So there are a couple areas where, we are lower than the state average within those subdomains that we will definitely take a closer look at. And again, thinking, looking forward, the idea of continuing to investigate, HQIM science to be able to have that fidelity grade to grade so that we can continue moving forward with these scores and having them at least stay at this solid level. And that's what I've got. You're welcome.
Moving on to middle school math. Same basic setup as what Tim had for his grades. So in 7th grade math, we do see some red there at the top under the exceeding and meeting expectations side. But we had some good news in the not meeting expectations, where we did considerably better than the state. Again, we have that kind of large group in the middle with the partially meeting that we need to bump up as we move forward. I like to also look at that particular cohort. Just to me, that makes the most sense. The same kids taking the same type of test. How did they do? The 7th grade math results, that cohort was essentially unchanged from the grade 6 results. So that was a little disappointing. We'd obviously like to see some improvement with the cohort from year to year. But with 7th grade math, we did not see that. 8th grade math did well compared to the state, with 43% exceeding or meeting compared to 38% in the state. And the flip side, again, having a much lower percentage of students not meeting expectations in the state now. Got a nice student growth percentile there with the 68th percentile, and the achievement percentile with 67th percentile. Those are very nice to see. In terms of the cohort, this group compared to their 7th grade results in math, we saw some significant changes, some improvements in the meeting or exceeding, went from 29% in 7th grade up to 43% in 8th grade with that same group of students. And the not meeting expectations decreased from 15% to 7%. So those are things that we really like to see in that same group of students as we move from year to year. Math at the high school level is only tested in grade 10, and you see one additional column here from the grades 3 through 8 results, and that's the competency determination column, where 98% of the students met the competency determination, which is the graduation requirement for high school math. With our class sizes, that's one student who did not meet that competency determination last year and has the ability to retest this year and next year if necessary. But again, in grade 10 math, we did tested better than the state, both in terms of exceeding and meeting expectations, but also in having a lower number not meeting expectations. So again, very nice with a achievement percentile, the 62nd percentile. That's nice to see as well. So that cohort also improved over the last time they were tested was 8th grade. There was no 9th grade math test. So over their 8th grade results, 25% scored meeting or exceeding. We were up to 55%. So that's a huge increase. 13% scored not meeting when they were tested in 8th grade, down to 2% this past year. So there's some very nice numbers to see. ELA, shifting gears a little bit here, 7th grade. Again, not quite with the state and exceeding and meeting expectations, but again, slightly better than the state in terms of those who are not meeting expectations. In terms of the cohort, there's essentially no change in meeting or exceeding from their grade 6 ELA results, but a nice decrease from 25% not meeting in 6th grade to the 15% not meeting in 7th grade. So obviously there's some room for improvement here in this cohort, but we did see some improvement from the previous year. In grade 8 ELA, pretty much tracking with the state as we go through, a little bit better in exceeding expectations, a little bit better in not meeting expectations, but pretty much tracking with the state as you go across, and that's reflected with I think the average SGP of 56, but an achievement percentile in the 64th percentile, which is good. This particular cohort was essentially unchanged from grade 7 to grade 8 in their ELA results. High school grade 10 ELA, again, there is no 9th grade ELA MCAS. The only high school test for ELA is 10th grade. Again, we have that last column where, again, 98% of the students in 10th grade met the competency determination graduation requirement. We did see slightly better than the state in terms of overall meeting or exceeding expectations, but a nice bump up from the state for those who were exceeding expectations. We were slightly higher than the state in not meeting expectations percentage there. It's a nice bump up as a cohort from their 8th grade test, where 45% scored meeting or exceeding in 8th grade, but by 10th grade, that bumped up to 60%. So a nice change to see that. In science, we see that we are, you really don't get much closer to the state than this in the exceeding and meeting expectations. We do see some improvement compared to the state with the percent not meeting expectations, and you can see that those students moved up into the partially meeting compared to the state, so that's a good difference to have with the state. I didn't compare with grade 5 because that's a pretty big gap in years, and the standards are very different between grade 5 and grade 8. And then in high school biology, while 100% of the students met the competency determination graduation requirement, in strict terms of performance, we would like to see some changes there. This is only the 2nd year of the next generation biology test. That's why you don't see any average scale score for 2021. The 1st year of the new test was in 2022. We actually did gain a point from that this year. The state percentage for not meeting expectations in us, it's 1 point difference, so pretty much the same. But you can see that compared to the state, we haven't done the job of moving those kids from partially meeting expectations up to meeting or exceeding. And so we need to focus there a little bit on what's going on and how we can get there. Again, this is an end of course test, which is very different from the 8th grade science MCAS test. So we can't really compare those two as a cohort. Some strengths that we saw in math. In these areas, congruence was our biggest strength compared to the state at 13% higher than the state. Linear, quadratic, and exponential models 10% higher, and then the others were slightly higher there in grades 8 and 7 in terms of, in grade 8, all domains scoring higher than the state, which was nice to see. And in grade 7, the number system being slightly higher than the state. Some curriculum areas of improvement that we'd like to see some effort put into changing. In grade 10, arithmetic with polynomials, 9% lower than the state, and geometric measurement and dimension 12% lower. There are so many math standards that it's really interesting when you look at it in a question by question basis. Some of these subdomains may only have one question on the test. So it gets a little, that was the case with the geometric measurement and dimension that we looked at that. Understanding and applying the Pythagorean theorem was a grade 8 area of improvement, which shocked me because to this day, I love the Pythagorean theorem. It just sticks in my head, but that's me. And then in grade 7, the geometry domain as a whole was 7% lower than the state, and using properties of operations to generate equivalent expressions is 12% lower than the state. So we'll take a look at what needs to happen there. In the ELA side, across the board, writing has been a strength for us and continues to be a strength for us. So in grade 10, we scored 11% higher than the state in writing, and in grade 8, 7% higher than the state in writing. In grade 7, in all domains, we scored no more than 3% lower than the state. Is that a strength? It sort of is. But we were close to the state in all those curriculum. That's kind of my point. We weren't extremely, there was no 10%, 12% difference between us and the state. We were very close to the state in all domains in 7th grade ELA. Areas of improvement for ELA, grade 10, vocabulary acquisition and use at 8% lower. Reading, we were pretty much steady at grade 8, but 1% lower. And in grade 7, 7% lower in vocabulary acquisition and use. So certainly vocabulary jumps out there, and maybe we need to have everybody participate in Shakespeare to help with the vocabulary piece. Science, high school biology, hereditary domain, we scored 9% higher than the state. That jumped right out at us there. In grade 8, in all domains, we scored even or slightly higher than the state. And in particular, in the earth space science, earth space in the universe subdomain, we were 13% higher than the state. Areas of improvement for science, high school biology. In an interesting twist, there were no areas in the domains or subdomains where we actually scored below the state. So I think that's an indication of that test as a whole statewide, perhaps being interesting. It's only in its second year. If I think back to when we first made the change in math and ELA to the next generation tests, we also saw some lower results in those first couple of years, but certainly we still have to look at that meeting or exceeding being well below the state average in biology. Evolution and molecules to organisms were the two domains we scored lowest, but even those we were slightly above the state average. In grade 8 science, the physical science energy subdomain was our lowest area compared to the state. So that is something we will be taking a look at. That is a big change. For many years, our lowest area on the grade 8 STE test was human body systems. And we actually were able to put in place last year for the first time as one of the 8th grade quarter rotation classes, a human systems class. There are so many standards in the science standards that it's near impossible to get to them all during regular class time. So we have a 7th grade rotation engineering class, and now we have an 8th grade rotation human body systems. And clearly that has helped because that's no longer our lowest scoring. Dropout and graduation. Very happy to report that we had a 0% dropout rate. These reflected in this accountability report for the class of 2022. The dropout rate and graduation are always a year's different from the MCAS results because they allow students who graduate over the summer or by October 1st to include in that next year's class at graduation rate. So we had a 0% dropout rate. That is actually, I think, the second year in a row we had a 0% dropout rate, and we had a 98% graduation rate for the class of 2022, which was the second year in a row. It was, I think, 96% or higher of graduation rate for 2 years in a row. And class of 2023 will also be very similar to these two. I think it's going to be 0 again for the dropout rate. And it should be right around 97 or 98% for the graduation rate as well. That's the 4-year graduation.
And then sort of wrap up the classifications for the schools, both schools. It's good news that we're not requiring assistance or intervention on the part of the state. That's a place we want to be, and it's because we're making progress towards our targets. So that those are moving targets, and they're subject to change annually. But we are pleased to see that we did show some improvement year over year, and I want to thank the staff who I think really took to heart some feedback that they got from us last year, that they gave to this committee last year, and I think the students that were also greatly encouraged to do their best. But as both Principal Mertnook and Principal Brigetti pointed out, I think it's important for the committee and the community to know that when we talk about excellence expected every day, we've got a lot of room for improvement in moving students from that partially meeting expectations and meeting expectations to answering a few more questions differently, correctly, to move them into a higher target area. So we will continue to work at that, work hard, but I think we're proud of most of the work that we're doing, and we will continue to address the areas that are in need of improvement. That was a lot, so I appreciate your patience in waiting.
Open the floor for questions.
And if I could,
Yeah.
Ms. Lerman, certainly I would suggest to the committee that there's no pressure to have those questions or comments now, although we're happy to address them. But if you want to take time to go back and look, to listen, to relook at any of the data and send your questions to me, we'd be happy to provide written answers to you before the next meeting and present to you any additional answers and findings for our next meeting as well.
I have a question about it's a probably simple question. For the students with disabilities subgroup, is that all students on IEPs or students who just take MCAS all?
No, it's all students who, correct.
It's actually all students with disabilities. Okay, so 504 is an IEP.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
A couple. We'll just start with the
Yep.
first one. So like Mike mentioned, and this is for you, Tim, I think. Like both of you mentioned, as we're looking at the data, to me, what sticks out as the most concerning is that large group of personally moving. So my question is, what are we doing to push those students on the cusp? What's your plan? How are you doing that?
So, I mean, getting students, especially in 3rd and 4th grade, who MCAS is a somewhat new thing, getting them used to the testing format. So making sure that we're utilizing the resources that HMH has in terms of growth measurement assessments and other computer-based assessments. We also have a program called Edulastic that we are trying this year to see if it makes a difference. And there are thousands of questions that can be looked at and searched by standard, and they're MCAS questions. It's a combination of released questions and questions that teachers have created who use this particular program. So the goal is to also get students used to taking the assessments online. And if we can take regular classroom assessments and have them in the MCAS format on the computer, it brings us to that place, especially for the younger grades. But specifically, targeting students, our goal is to try to make our grades 3 to 6 RTI more robust than it is. In grades K1 and 2, the nature of the schedule, the nature of the way that those classes are taught, and the teaming that goes on, it's like RTI is just kind of a natural extension of that. As soon as you get into 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, especially some older grades, it becomes a little bit more challenging in terms of the scheduling challenges and things like that. So we have taken a hard look at the interventionist schedules this year, and we are pushing interventionists into math classes that we've never pushed into before. We are creating more groups that we can target student need with and try to meet the needs through this RTI model, whether it's pulling students out, having a teacher push in. We are also looking at like an all hands on deck. So if there are teachers, in terms of looking at schedules that we can get into classrooms even for a little while, or teachers that can provide support to an RTI group, the more we can identify student need, through progress monitoring, and the more we can do that RTI with fidelity in those grades 3 to 6, I think the more you're going to see that movement. It's something we started, a couple of years ago. We continued that work last year, and this year we're expanding upon it even more. And we're also using our progress monitoring more in those upper grades. So instead of, a handful of students, we're trying to get an overall snapshot beyond the growth measurements that are done 3 times a year, so that we can try to see in quicker, doses, if you will, what that growth is and which students need that targeted growth. So really expanding the RTI, I think, is one of our biggest ones, and getting students used to that online testing and used to the format, being able to, take tests online essentially that match or are very similar to in format to the MCAS. But also, things which might seem little, but making sure that we have a breakfast start in the morning for students to have breakfast, making sure that we're doing our life skills SEL work in grades 3 to 6, making sure that we're communicating with families so that they're a big part of this process, and encourage them to be a part of the process. I think those things are all part of that, because the more a student is taken care of from that SEL place and the more families are involved, I think the more a student in the classroom is able to really experience the class in a way that allows for that growth. So there's also all those other supports for breakfast, like I said, to the communication to those character development classes. I think also all of that plays in as well.
Would you say that, so the testing platform and HMH and the measures and the Edulastic you said as well?
Yeah.
So would you say that's an expectation for the teachers, grades 3 through 6, that's
Yeah, I would say definitely the HMH piece. The Edulastic piece is something we're rolling out this year. We had looked at it last spring. The Edulastic piece is something, again, that we are exploring. We're introducing teachers to, and as this year gets rolling, I anticipate the Edulastic piece becoming more of a norm in terms of classroom assessments or now's first thing. But definitely, my message is take advantage of all of the online assessments that HMH has, from the benchmarking to those within the class itself. Yeah, no problem.
My question is the new ELA programming going to hit all these areas of improvement? Because that's my biggest concern. That's a lot.
So it's
That those 3 things in all those gray areas are huge.
For sure, for sure. When you look at, the domains and then the subdomains within, the way we had always done ELA was kind of, here's the standards, whatever grade teacher, make it happen, essentially. Teachers pay teachers.
Yeah.
What we've always done. I'm hopeful because this is the first time we will have had a program in the 23 years that I've been involved with in public schools. That is full fidelity grades K to 6 in this building and 7, 8 down the hill. That's the part that I'm most excited for. We're going to be hitting standards that I don't think we hit before. And I think looking at the quality of the program from what I've seen, I'm really, really hopeful that, like math, I'm looking forward, maybe not in the short term, but certainly over time, seeing those improvements.
This is a good deal.
Yeah, it's a very long list. Yep. I would agree with that.
But
Computer-based programs?
So HMH, yep. So when they take their growth measurement assessments, it's computer based. And then there are some, other parts of the program that students are using their Chromebooks to access the curriculum. And the progress monitoring that we do through STAR is computer based as well. Yep. And Edulastic is a computer based program that again creates, there's thousands of questions in MCAS format that you can search by standard. So if there's a particular standard to your plan that we're looking for, not only can we cover it, but we can use release questions and questions that were teacher created through, a special question generator that they have to get students used to that format.
I have a couple of follow-ups just to Andrea. I was wondering, we talked about the improvements that we saw in math and believe that's due to the high quality instructional materials. But we're thinking about ELA. I'm wondering, as you're in classrooms, this is 2 parts. One, what level of fidelity do you see teachers using these high quality instructional materials? And 2, how do you believe teachers are feeling supported with this?
So good questions.
I was just
Take
thinking
one
the same thing. Good.
one at a time. The fidelity, like the message from the very beginning has been crystal clear for me. And I've said it this way, every grade, every section, full fidelity. I simplify it to that one sentence. It's driven home, whether it's a grade level team meeting, it's driven home, whether it's a faculty meeting, whether I'm bumping into someone in the hallway, asking them how things are going. It's always with, don't forget, full fidelity, like we're not bringing, there are some tiered interventions where we may use other resources, but that you're talking about, tiered interventions above and beyond what's happening. But in the classroom, yes, the expectation is that there's full fidelity. Now, in terms of what I've observed, it's just that Superintendent Richard and I were walking through last week or the week before, and we went into an intervention class and we were using HMH materials, teachers, teaching. So it's there when I see it. And I'm trying to get the feedback in terms of, what supports they need. Now to the second part, to what degree do they feel supported? We had some special development in person last year. We did a little bit of over the summer, and then there's some more coming in November where we'll be, using the PLC model to be able to get cross grade and teams together. The feedback that I got is that teachers would like to be able to talk to those who are doing it cross grade to see how it's going. I know that our 6th grade is interested in communicating with the 7th and 8th grade to see how that's going. So in terms of, the initial rollout, there was a lot of work done on the teacher end to figure out where resources were and what we can use. The good news is that the platform's the same. So Waggle's just like math. And then, the online component, you're using the same link essentially to access. So that piece of it, fortunately, we didn't have to do much. But I think the greatest question that I'm getting is when can we get together as teams to try to see cross grade, how things are going, even cross school in some cases.
And if I could add to that, we, we had a number of teachers participate in, as Tim mentioned, professional development over the summer. We had grant monies to support that. We learned last week that our continuation grant for the rollout or the implementation of HQIM for math was awarded to the Lee Public Schools. So we've got another $87,000 that we're able to leverage this year to offer professional development and training for staff. So we're meeting tomorrow virtually with Jake Foster from STEM Learning. And then I'm meeting on the 23rd with representatives from Mount Holyoke College so we can build a plan to make sure the teachers have plenty of offerings and opportunities to get the trainings, the PD, the extra opportunities to practice and try out these HQIM so that the students can continue to benefit. Sorry, Nicole, I can't see it.
Will we have something similar in place to do that with the ELA curriculum?
It hasn't been made available yet, although I expect that the state probably will come out with something much like they did for math. That didn't become available until April of last year. So hopefully the state will offer something similar for ELA.
If I could just add to that, it's been great to go through that process, and there's things we can pull from it for ELA, even if we need to wait for some of that funding. There's some things we can do in terms of walkthroughs and teacher meetings
I
and
just
things
want
like
to make
that.
sure the staff feels supported and that they have the time to be able to do these things, like get together with their cohorts and all that. And if it's that grant money that we need to get subs and do that kind of stuff, then I want to make sure that's available to them, because that's one of the things that as a teacher I felt most stressful with it is that we kept throwing more and more stuff gets thrown at you, and there's just never enough time to plan and do what needs to be done in the best nature for kids. So if that's what it takes to get this done, then that's what we need. I don't want them to feel like we're just throwing crap at them and saying, do your best with what you got. You help them to feel like,
Can I add one more thing?
yeah.
Just real quickly, this is an exercise I go through every year. Some people chuckle at me about this, but I think it's important to know where we stand in terms of MCAS, not because it's the be all end all, but it's a measurement that we have in terms of our neighbors in the county. So I always look at it's easiest for high school because there's 9 of us in the county counting BART. There's always 2 outliers. We know who they are. They always do. They blow it out of the water every year. But we always are in the top half. And I think that's important to know. And as a matter of fact, even including those 2 outliers this year, we always 3rd or 4th usually, depending on how you rank. And you're not supposed to, I understand, but it's important, I think, for our staff to know, for our students to know, for our families to know, that compared to our neighbors, we are more than holding our own, and we're doing well. On this one measure of how students.
I'm thinking more about the curriculum on the whole, not necessarily certain tests, but I'm thinking if we're giving them a new curriculum, we want them to feel comfortable implementing the curriculum, not like, here you go. Bye-bye.
I give the faculty in both buildings an enormous amount of credit for doing math, and then a year later, that's a
My
lot.
first 4 years in the building at the elementary school, they brought in 3 new curriculums, one year, and then they like, this one doesn't work, we're gonna try a new one. And this one doesn't work, we're gonna try a new one. In 4 years, we had 3 new curriculums, and there was no support or anything, and we were all like, I don't want anybody to we're going to invest in curriculum and feel like we've invested in them as well. So.
The first 2 are going to sound really silly, but I feel it's important for the record. Like, can someone define HQIM? I think we know what it means, but I just want to make sure. No.
Sure. So again, HQIM stands for High Quality Instructional Materials. That's something that is determined by DESE by way of Curate, which is curriculum rated by teachers. And so there is a pool of educators who review instructional materials and rate them in various domains. And I don't want to misspeak, and I'm not going to cite what those domains are without going. But there is a site right on DESE where you can go and you can examine those materials that qualify under Curate, and you can determine, or you can see the determinations made by those teams about how those particular instructional materials rate. Yep.
And the second one is, we use the term a lot in these last few meetings. Similar request for the term of fidelity related to HQIM. Can you just give a quick 30-second overview of what that term is?
Yeah, I think it's using the materials in the way that staff have been trained and that they're intended to be used. And I know the last part might seem a little bit vague, but the expectation is that that staff will use the professional development opportunities that they've been offered and directly correlate that to how they're taking the materials that are given to them and put in front of students to use them to enhance the educational opportunities that are there. So if a teacher says, yes, I'm using into math, and they're doing that once a week, well, they're not doing it with fidelity. If they're doing it twice a week, they're not doing it with fidelity. Those materials are meant to be accessed on a daily basis, predominantly, so that the students have consistency between sections, between grade levels. They're using the same terminology. They're using the language that's in the textbook, so that as a student transitions from grade 3 to 4 to 5 and so on, they're hearing that language, and that language is being modeled over and over again. The types of questions that are being asked, the types of learning activities that are associated with the instructional materials are also being again used regularly, and I can't say with fidelity, are you regularly and consistently between and among staff and grade levels. Yeah.
You referenced early in your presentation the state's talking point in terms of COVID learning loss has
halted
or ceased, and that if you thought of it like this is how I think of it, like a check mark, right? Like we were on the downward trajectory, and last year we kind of continued that as a state, and now we're starting to go back up or we're flatlined. Do you agree with that in terms of new public schools? Do you feel that our COVID learning loss has sort of halted, to use the state language?
I don't know. Again, I questioned it. I don't know that it has. As it relates specifically to Lee, I think we've done a good job of advancing students out of the gaps that they experienced during COVID. But I think that to say that it's halted is a misnomer. We still have challenges with attendance. We still have challenges with student engagement. We still have challenges, with social emotional learning and students being able to access the curriculum. So, and a lot of that goes back to the experience that they had from March of 2020 through September of 2022. So we've got, I think we still have a long way to go. Was it slowed? Sure. Halted? I don't agree with. For Lee.
Part of coming in as somebody who specializes in social learning, part of coming in as a preschooler and then going preschool, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, is you learn things like cooperative learning, how to sit and attend, how to be a good friend, how to have intersocial play. And when you miss preschool, when you miss kindergarten, when you miss first grade, you don't get those readiness skills. And so a lot of kids don't know how to do those kind of things. And so when they came in as a first grader and missed preschool and then missed kindergarten, they came in with a lot of those skills lagging. And so they were trying to learn those skills as first graders while still trying to learn the skills that they didn't learn over Zoom. And so I think we are still trying to teach a lot of social emotional skills for kids to be available for learning that they don't have. And I think that's going to be a long time coming. So I don't think we're out of the slide yet. And I think we've got a good couple of years left before we're out of that slide. Personally, as somebody who spends a lot of time in that school district.
And if I could, I think, when we returned from our COVID absence in the fall of 20, and the state talked about an accelerated learning model with this expectation that students don't look backwards, only look forward. I think we balanced that accelerated learning ideal with the reality of meeting students where they are and trying to bring them forward. Yeah. So I think I would be ignorant and foolish if I sat before you and said that we've halted the slide. We're addressing it, is what I think is probably the best answer to give you. We're doing everything we can to slow it, and doing everything we can to get out of it. But we haven't halted the slide, but we need to continue to, as I've said to Union 29, continue to work hard to get students here every day. And that's still a real struggle for us. While we showed some improvement, it's still a real struggle for us to get students to be invested in coming to school and being engaged. And staff are doing a tremendous job to try to engage students, and so are the administrators. But we still have a long way to go.
The first part of the presentation showed the goals and how the quartiles played out, right? So the points that we received, and then we kind of switched to state average for sort of individual reports. Those original quartiles are based off of 2019 performance goals, right? Like, so pre-COVID performance. And I'm just wondering, this might be in a follow-up, right? If you don't have the data, but I'm just kind of curious where we fall in relationship to where we were in 2019 pre-COVID in terms of.
Yeah, I'd be happy to put that together and send that to you.
And then I just wanted to point out, Greg, that I really appreciated having the cohort data tracking. I think that's a really important piece, especially when we look at students moving through the COVID learning loss and seeing where they were. And then, I mean, everyone kind of stated it, right? Like the MCAS is an autopsy. It's very much looking back at a year, and then we kind of set goals, hopefully, to improve MCAS performance along with all the other things we talked about. And I'm wondering, as a committee, what do we want to see over the course of the year to make sure that when we're having this conversation in a year, we can say that with some level of depth that have an expectation of what our MCAS scores are going to be, or where students so what can we expect from this high quality instruction? Is it we talked about those sort of metrics and goals that you're using on those quarterly or sort of trimester segments? Can we have an expectation of kind of seeing those and adjustments that are made in instructional practices along the way? It's really an open-ended question. I don't really have an answer, so I'm just kind of curious if you all agree that we should look for something in 3 months or another report, or.
I'd like to suggest to the committee that this is where perhaps the curriculum subcommittee really needs to play a role and meet, so that we as a small group can share those data, those updates with you, so that Ms. Kashurik, as the chair of that subcommittee, can provide the update to the committee, or we can do that jointly. But I think it's a fair and reasonable ask. And again, my recommendation to the full committee would be that we do that primarily through the subcommittee work and bring it back to the full committee.
I think Craig would like to charge this curriculum subcommittee with that task, wouldn't you?
He's on
it. Good job, Craig, you're on it. Yeah. So, I mean, I think one of the things that came out of it last year is we bought the year before we bought the math curriculum, and then last year we bought the ELA curriculum. So I think that, we'd like to see them work. And also we kind of have that point. Yeah.
Yeah. Not only financial investment.
Yeah.
Teacher. We're seeing MCAS or any other metrics.
I was just going to say, I'm also wondering, as we're talking this through, as the administrators in the building, I know we've talked a lot about high quality instructional materials, and that's very important. I'm just thinking about a year ago, we were sitting here and what was said and how it went. Do you see anything that you or the building or the teachers or something that has been done differently that has affected student performance? That is something besides
I'm a little bit of an outsider because I'm in the special education world most of the time. But an observation that I'd like to share is that the teachers who, we had some teachers who came in who are new, who may have had some access to these programs and kind of came to us with a little bit of knowledge. But the teachers that are working with this, and you see it in the hallways and you see it in the classrooms and in data team meetings, they're collaborating, but not just about ideas, but just about, hey, how do you do this with these, with these kids or on this topic? And I know there's always been collaboration. I think that that's kind of our, we have a great community for that. But I've seen an increase in that even at special education meetings where the general education teacher and the special education teachers are presenting data. And it's a very different feel than it was. And it's really more centered around what we're doing and why we're doing it and how it relates to where we would like the students to be. So it's just an outside perspective for that.
In my building, the biggest change in the last couple of years has been the addition through the ESSER grants of something we've never been able to have in this building before, which is the interventionists. So we have a part-time math interventionist. This is now the 3rd year, and a part-time ELA interventionist in the 2nd year. And particularly at the middle school levels, those have been really helpful in being able to get students who had some tremendous gaps, particularly in math gaps, to move forward with extra time. And it's difficult. And we call it a middle school, but because we're combined, it's really a junior high model more than a middle school model. So we follow the, 48-minute periods and everything like that. But we figured out a way, at least for those kids who need it the most at the middle school level, to have those pull-out time for extra time in math and in ELA. Struggle a little bit at the high school level because, kids are locked into their schedules, but if a student does have a directed study, we sometimes will pull them out to help with that. That has been huge for the last 2 to 3 years, depending on the subject. Something we've never had in this building ever. So being able to have that to help address some of the COVID learning loss. Mike knows I hate that term, but the COVID slide, for lack of a better word, that we saw has been immensely helpful. And it's one of those interesting things where we still have, Craig, you asked the question, have we rounded that corner yet? Are we heading back up? And I agree with Mike. I don't think I can say yes, we have, but at the same time, that's happening at the same time as this federal money is disappearing, and probably those interventions are going away.
So is that something you need to take into consideration as we look at next year's budget?
I think there's so much that we're going to need to take into consideration.
Of course, I know that's a big funding hole, but in terms of
the 2 things in this building, we had those 2 interventionists and the addition of the additional staff, the additional counselor that shared between the 2 buildings. I can't imagine what the last 3 years, 2 or 3 years would have been like without those resources.
I don't have a single regret for having invested ESSER dollars in personnel. I think that the choices that this committee supported us making in what positions were funded and why, I have zero regret over what we did. To Mr. Langlois' point, we as a committee and a community need to figure out a way to sustain those resources because they are critically important. We need to continue to build on what we've got. And to the question of what else have we done? I think those of you who are able to make it to a convocation this year heard about building relationships. And we need to continue to do that so that students do want to come to school, so that they feel like we are family, so that they feel like, as the student said earlier at the beginning of the meeting, like they belong. That's incumbent upon us, and it's our job to make sure that they have those experiences so that the learning is more easily accessible for them.
It seems like school might be a place where kids want to be. If they know that they have support in a place like interventionists or a staff, that it could add to their environment where they could focus on the learning. I mean, for my career as a teacher, I've seen where sometimes the issues that the kids are facing need to be resolved first before they're done. Or you want to bring them into school so they can get it. And I think it really is important. Again, school is a place for kids to be and want to be. And relationship is key. Because if you have a kid that is, say, absent a lot, by having a relationship with a teacher or a staff member, now the kid has something for them wanting to come to school for, which is a great thing.
Nicole, to answer your question from the LES perspective, specifically with the new curriculum that we purchased, the growth measurement assessment for sure. I think it gives a better snapshot. And I think that it being connected to the online component Waggle is huge. I think that just provides a support for our students, for teachers to be able to have students work on that. And it's tailored to the students' needs based on that assessment. And then the collective experience of everybody having that, or benchmarking as a school at this date, and it's like this school-wide thing. And then being able to, this year for the first time, share those growth measurement assessments with families, I think is huge. And then just that year-over-year familiarity. So students go into the next grade level and, okay, open your Chromebooks, get into Waggle, they know what we're talking about. So just as we go year to year to year, there's just that familiarity piece that I've seen. And then just this collective experience that we have using the new curriculums K-6, which those are the things that I'm noticing.
No, this may sound like a silly question I ask you. It's just my knowledge of their product is, do the kids get like instant results of what their scores are when they do these programs, or do someone go through with them? Say, oh, well, question 3 you got wrong. I don't know.
It's within, I think, 24 or 48 hours that the results are squared away and then the Waggle gets updated. Or 24 to 48 hours when we can start printing reports. I don't remember the exact amount of time before the Waggle is updated in terms of what the student needs are, but the reports come pretty soon after.
The kids decide what they need to go through to help that student.
I mean, we definitely use, so we just had our data team meetings and the growth measurement from HMH, in addition to progress monitoring with STAR, all of that is used in terms of trying to figure out what interventions or what supports we can put in place for individual students. And that's a big part of that discussion is using those growth measures. Thank you.
I have kind of a comment here. I've been thinking for a little while, and first I'm going to ask for some forgiveness and some leniency. I've been kind of drafting like an outline response to MCAS results in my head for the past couple of days, but I've been doing this kind of in real time. I'm sure Heidi has a front row view of my scribble over here. First, administrative team, thank you guys for all the hard work you put into the data collection and the presentation. Really, really appreciate it. That being said, if I had a magic wand today, I would wave that wand and I would throw MCAS right in the trash. That would be gone today and our kids would never sit for that test again. I don't think that a single day or a couple days here or there testing our children is an adequate representation of the educational experience they receive in this school. I think about, Tim, you made a comment, and it really hit me right. You talked about, communication with families and home to make sure that kids are prepped, get a good night's sleep, good dinner, breakfast. They feel supported at home. I'm not an educator, obviously. I think I'm the only non-educator at this table. I have a view into, sometimes I have a view into what some of these homes look like. And I could not imagine having a child that's going to come in that, if I look at our class sizes, 50 kids per grade, right around there. And for our school district, that's 2%, right, of our MCAS results. Each child is 2%. So if you've got one kid who has a rough night at home, right, that is going to impact our scores for our school greatly. That could be a rock star kid that's exceeding expectations. But all of a sudden parents are home and all of a sudden me and my friends show up and no longer both parents at home and they've got to worry about that. That's the forefront of their mind, right? They're not going to do well in testing. They're just not. And then I think about other kids like Jen. I can't imagine the work that your team puts in to get all those kids on IEPs and 504s through testing. I can't imagine what you guys have to do. I mean, God bless you. But I think about like my third grader, right? My little baby. And, you know, she has some different learning abilities, right? She's got an IEP. And Jen, we've sat on meetings, you, me, and Sarah, and all of her team have sat on meetings where we talked about how my kid's not a good test taker. And for me, that's pretty foreign because I am a good tester. But my kid, we have to trick her, you know? So I can't imagine what's going to happen when she has to sit down for standardized testing. But I know what it's like when we're talking about our times tables and we're driving in the truck on our way to horseback riding lessons, and she's nailing it. You know, she's nailing it in the air, nothing in front of her, no prompts, no nothing. I'm just quizzing her as we go. I know what she does, but then I know what she's probably going to do when it gets put in front of her on a test that she's sitting in a room, you know, with whatever thing she has in front of her to help her with this test, whatever is in her IEP for this. You know, MCAS is going to make my kid not look smart, but I know that she's incredibly intelligent. I know that for a fact. And I do want to say to our educators, I think we've got a couple up there on the board that are watching the meeting, and I'm sure that we're going to have a handful of them that are going to watch this meeting when it gets posted afterwards. I'm sure it's going to get around. I think our educators do a phenomenal job in our school every single day. The MCAS results, you know, if they're not great in some areas, that is not, in my opinion, an indicator of the performance of our educators. I think that they do a phenomenal job. I really do. I'm proud of the work that they do. So I guess my question was, and I think Craig, you kind of touched on it too, like what other ways can we determine the educational, I think the word here, how else can we determine how our schools are doing and areas that we can improve on and give it I call it HQIM. Where else can you, how can we determine that? Like, is there benchmark testing that we can look at? And no offense to MCAS, I'm not interested. But if our teachers are coming forward and they're saying, hey, listen, I'm noticing through benchmark testing that we've got a handful of kids in this grade that are struggling with this. Can we bring this? Can we figure out a way? Or at the end of the year, we see, hey, the grades in grade 4 in this area were phenomenal. You know, but in here it struggled. Is there a way? I guess I'm not an educator. I don't know what I'm asking for. But I feel personally MCAS is not, it's just not there for me. I don't like it.
For ELA, for math, the growth measurement that you're saying is an example. So they take the test the end of September, the middle of January, and then again in May. And it's through HMH, so it covers the material that's been covered in class. So it's completely relevant. And then it should show growth, you know, starting from the beginning of the year, middle of the year. So you should see, and it's pretty specific in terms of the data points that it identifies. And I'll mention it in my report, but we sent those home recently. There's one little exception in second grade, but we do more of it. Hopefully communicating with families, letting them know throughout that year. But that data does exist through those growth measures, at least in most people possible. Thank you.
So I sit on the State Association for Assessment and Accountability, and our job is to realize what the options that may be available to the state are as we move forward and we examine what the future of MCAS looks like. I'll tell the committee that you know, it looks like there may be some ballot measures next year that could move to eliminate MCAS. As a state association, we realize that there is value to the accountability system. There is value to assessment. Our push is that the assessment time is less and that the form is different, and that we have fluid assessment that can be dynamic in nature. We need to better utilize the benefits of artificial intelligence so that we can get results more quickly. So the question that was brought earlier about what do we do and how are we responding and treating students based on their results on MCAS? Well, we don't get those in time to make adjustments to scheduling so that it can be done in what's in the best interest of the student. And so I'll get more information to this committee about what options are going to be coming before the community at large. But there is value. We just need to know how to use it, when to use it, and how much is appropriate. I think that Principal Briganti can also talk about the change in sort of grading and how there's the move here at LMHS to change that so that we're not relying on just traditional testing models to assess to what degree students are learning. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all.
Yeah, sure. So, first off, there's a lot, I think that many educators would agree with what you said. So, grades are interesting, right? Because different teachers have different policies, different focus. You could have, I was a chemistry teacher, so you could have two chemistry teachers that give the same exact instructional materials, textbook, whatever, and the same student could get different grades in each class. Could be considerably different. So one of the things we try to do is pull out and remove from the academic score those things that are not academic, that don't relate to the standards. So that's why several years ago we started a move towards competency-based grading here. First step in that was to pull out kind of the non-academic stuff, the extraneous stuff. I remember when I was a student, maybe some of you guys remember this, but there oftentimes was this weird 20% class participation thing in there. And
there was never a rubric.
How did they figure that out? We never knew.
Liquor, you always got 100% class participation, but if you never said anything in class, you got.
So all that stuff we pulled out of the grade. We've identified that there are certain competencies that each course should have based on the standards. All of our grading is done based on those competencies. We have more work to do over the next few years to further refine that and make some more improvements there to make sure that the grade is an accurate reflection of what a student is, how far they can demonstrate their competence in the subject areas. I think we're on the way there, and a lot of schools in the area are in very similar kinds of models look a little bit different from each other. I think there are ways to do that. And I think we've also, I'll get on my soapbox just for 10 seconds. I think we've also, over time, particularly since the 1990s, lost sight of what the purpose of education and a democracy is. And it's, I was a chemistry teacher, but I bet you not too many people around this table can remember how to do stoichiometry problems at this point in time. Okay. We don't teach chemistry, we don't teach English, we don't teach math, we don't teach social studies for the sake of the content. We teach it to make well-rounded individuals who can function well in a democratic society. I'm not sure MCAS matters that, but that's just my soapbox. So I'll stop.
Can you imagine what his head would do if he told him what?
No, thank you guys.
I won't get on my soapbox about that.
Yeah,
But
seriously, thank you all for the time you put in, Cass. I mean, the results, the data, I've perused through it. I haven't had enough time to get the full attention that the public that you can give it. But I really appreciate all the time and energy you guys put into this. It means a lot. And I do hope that your teachers, your education staff do know that, I think they do an amazing job, despite what any test result says. I think they do a great job. They have our babies, and they have them, they have them almost as much as we do when they're awake every single day, and they are a big part of their development. And so to have, I support them. I think they do a phenomenal job, and I don't think that a single test result in a single area is a determining factor of how good or poor they do their job. So that's my personal opinion. I think the year, but I'll get my soapbox too.
all right. Does anybody else have any more comments about MCAS? All right, then we're gonna move on to directors and principals reports. Do you have anything else on
I don't want to speak for Tim and Greg, but I think they've done the yeoman's work for their schools. And I do know that Jordan is on vacation, but I'll get a written report to share out to you.
Jen, is there anything you wanted to say?
I do, I have a few
Okay.
things.
All right.
We do have some new staff that have started since we last met. We have a new speech language pathologist. Her name is Elvira Kay. She started on September 25th. We have two new paraprofessionals that started this week. McKenna Hammerly, who's a former student, and Brittany Knights. And then I have one more who's still ongoing with onboarding paperwork, but as soon as I get the go ahead. So we're looking good. We do still have some open positions, but it's not as dire as it was. And so next week, we've made a change in when people come on board, they shadow other staff for 3 to 4 days. And so they're not just like, oh, here you go, work with this. So they're working with some different people, and they're shadowing people, whether it's in a developmental program or preschool or as a classroom paraprofessional. And the reasoning behind that too is sometimes we have to pull people to cover other positions. So we're really trying to be very proactive with that. So that's been a really nice change, which the union has kind of put some input to and has been really helpful with us kind of coming up with this model. Our current enrollment in preschool is down a little bit. I actually only have 7 students enrolled in my morning preschool program. We've had some people move, and then a couple of families needed full day care just because of their work schedules. And our 3-year-olds are here 4 mornings a week from 8:30 to 11. So I do have 3 openings. If there are any other students out there that are looking for some time in that program. Our 4-year-old program is 5 afternoons a week. We have 10 students, but I do have 2 openings. I can go up to 12 in that room comfortably. So I just want to put it out there to the community that we have those. Our special education numbers, I know Mr. Richard spoke a little bit about this. We are currently at 128 students as of today on IEPs. And I will keep you guys updated. There's a lot of evaluations. We've had a lot of referrals. And I believe we had 10 students who moved to the district on IEPs this year, which is an unprecedented amount. Actually 12, because we got several others, but there are, like I said, a couple of paraprofessional positions still open in both buildings. There's potentially one in this building, one at the elementary school, and then technically I also have one for a student that's tuitioned into Berkshire Hills. We do have that filled for the moment, but if I have somebody who's interested in that, we can get them trained in there as well. Indicators, special education has a number of indicators that we look at different data. So we have finished indicator 7, which is all about preschool outcomes with for students with IEPs. And we look at several different key areas for when they first come in as 3-year-olds or sometimes 4-year-olds and start receiving special education services. And then when they turn 5, and we look at that incoming data and outcoming data. And it looks at motivation and attitude towards school, focus and participation in class activities, academic performance, emotional regulation. So it looks at social emotional development, cognitive development, and language. Just make sure that the student is prepared for kindergarten and beyond. And so we as a team, so that includes preschool teacher, myself, parents, and other related service providers kind of look at that right when they come in and then when they leave, and we look at that. We've had a nice progression in those scores. We haven't gotten any reports back, but I'm eager to see what those percentages look like when we get them back. And then we also, indicator 14 is for post-school outcomes for students with IEPs. So students who have graduated a year ago, we contact them at least 3 times, but we tried contacting 6 or 7 times since June. And it's really, we're looking to see of our graduates of students with disabilities, are they enrolled in higher education? Are they enrolled in higher education or competitively employed? Are they enrolled in education or in some other post-secondary education or training program? And so those are the things the state wants. Part of this is one of our indicators that shows up in our state data. And I spoke to the person at length at the state and I said, well, it's all well and good. We actually, last year we had 0 participants because there was a very small graduating class. This year we had a bigger graduating class and we had a little over half of our students responded. And I talked to the state, I said, well, the students have really no incentive to be like, I've graduated, I'm all done with you. And so that's part of what we're talking about at the state level. And we've talked at some of our leadership meetings is how can we incentivize, the state is looking for this data, but how can we incentivize for these students to participate in that? So we're working on that. And if you have any ideas, we would be open to them. And our IDEA special education grants, the 240 and the 262 grants were submitted. And Eric and I have those in. We're just waiting for the state to get around to approving them. That's all I have. And if there's any questions.
Anybody have any questions for them? All right, thank you. All right, next up, we have our committee reports and we just have finance.
For finance, something we met earlier, prior to this meeting, and we discussed a couple of warrants. So Mr. Jesner, if you wouldn't mind, please, let us know about accounts payable.
Sure. So since our last meeting, we had 3 accounts payable warrants totaling $254,166.11. The first one was on 9/13 for a total of $102,539.98. And that was made up primarily of G4, Eversource, and Renaissance. Then on 9/20, there was a warrant for $17,453.50. And that was for Maya unemployment bill that the town got to us a little bit late. So we did a mid warrant just to get that through. And then on 9/27, we had a warrant that totaled $134,172.63. And that was made up primarily of Converge 1, Due 4, and Hillcrest.
Thank you. And I will note that the finance subcommittee did vote to approve.
Okay. I will accept the motion for the accounts payable.
So moved.
Give the amount.
$254,166.11.
We have a second.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Because he only seconded. Any discussion? Brenda, can you do a roll call?
Mr. Robin?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Ms. Keshurk?
Yes.
Mr. Langwa?
Yes.
Ms. Larmen? And Mr. Nichols?
Yes.
So payroll warrants, since our last meeting, we had 2 warrants totaling $594,630.46.
Again, the finance subcommittee did vote to approve this.
I will entertain a motion for the payroll.
I'll make the motion to approve the payroll in the total of $594,630.46.
You have a second? Any discussion? Did you get the second? It was great. And then when you're done there, can you give us a roll call?
Mr. Robin?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yes.
Ms. Keshurk?
Yes.
Mr. Langwa?
Yes.
Ms. Larmen?
Yes.
And Mr. Nichols?
Yeah, abstain. So, I got lost there. Yeah, I know. I'm abstaining.
All right, next on the agenda is old business, which we have none. Oh, is that a separate company?
It's just to let the committee know that Eric submitted the end of year report on the 2nd. And so thank you and congratulations on doing your first municipal end of year report.
And he's still here.
And he's still around to talk about it. So.
What did you sign into, like a 25-year contract? Good job, Eric. No new business, future business. Our next meeting is on November 14th. Last thing, adjournment. I need a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, any secondings? I'll second. Any discussion? Brenda, can you roll call, please?
Mr. Robin?
Yes.
Ms. Cooper?
Yeah.
Ms. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Langwell?
Yes.
Ms. Larmen?
Yes,
And Mr. Nichols?
Yes.
we are adjourned at 8:50.